Peter, if you don't mind me saying, almost nostalgically, that back in the 70s, things were pretty good if you were commuting from Oxford to Paddington.
Well, I mentioned there were many things that were better about the railways then. There's all kinds of silly lies told about British Railways when it was nationalised industries, which aren't true, and I recall how untrue they were from personal experience. It's quite amusing to see Grant Shapps, the Minister for E-Scooters, claiming that he's worried that the rail unions and their strikes will drive passengers away from the railways. The British government, particularly the Transport Department under its various names, which has always been a ministry for roads and cars, has been driving passengers away from the railways systematically, brutally, and at great cost since the 1960s, when they shut down large parts of the railways. Examine this with logic for a moment. What they said, on the advice of a rather stupid businessman called Richard Beeching, was that the smaller railway lines, which fed the bigger ones, didn't make a profit. Well, do you know what? Acacia Avenue doesn't make a profit, and the B4029 doesn't make a profit. That's not what they're there for. They're there to provide a transport system. And if you shut them down, people couldn't get from their homes to the big roads. That's what happened with the railways. What everyone has learned since 1963 is that railways are actually the most civilized, efficient, energy efficient, particularly form of transport, and the most environmental form of transport known to man, both in urban and rural transport. We were mad to close them, and we're mad to run them in the way that we have. The form of privatisation chosen, I'm against privatisation anyway, the form chosen in this country must have been chosen by someone in a delirium. You couldn't have found anything more guaranteed to make the railways work worse than they did before. I've been travelling on them all this time. They've been through an explosion of passengers. That's not because they were privatised. It's because people were forced by house prices into long-distance commuting.
And 10 million more people have moved here in the last 20 years.
Yeah, the railways in this country need, above all, huge amounts of investment. What I propose is a treaty of Clapham Junction between the government and the people and the railway unions, in which we rebuild all the railways we stupidly ripped up in the 60s. In return, the unions stop striking. But I always do find the sight of well-off middle-class people complaining that railway workers get well paid slightly distasteful.
Oh.
You've made Cathy
come in. Peter, you know, their average wage is about 44,000. That's well above if you look at the private sector that's shrivelling now. I agree with you on the management of the railways has been appalling, but I think a union's holding the country hostage now, and silly ministers ratcheting up the dialogue without doing anything. But these people have pensions. If you look at the vast size of the public sector and the control of the unions pushed us into lockdown. They took the most pro-lockdown position of all. Now they actually did get a small pay rise during that period, despite the fact loads of them weren't working and at home. So this is suicidal. I'm not saying the way Network Rail have run it is good, but this is still wrong to be held hostage like this.
I don't know about being held hostage. Look, this is the sort of language. I was an industrial correspondent in the great Thatcher years of constant conflict between unions, government and employers. And I learned from that there are indeed stupid, greedy trade union leaders, and also that there are responsible, intelligent ones. I also learned that there are incompetent managements who get themselves into wholly unnecessary confrontations by not negotiating. The other thing I learned, and you can see this now, people write about working in the warehouses of the great internet companies and the misery of it, not even being allowed to go to the lavatory, incredibly long hours, treated like a serf. This is what happens when you don't have trade unions. No conservative person also can be against trade unions after seeing the huge importance of the freedom to withdraw labour in Poland in 1980. Every conservative person admires Lech Wałęsa and the shipyard strikes in Gdansk. That was an assertion of the freedom to withdraw labour, which is one of the essential freedoms of man. And I will not be against it. Anywhere, having seen that. And it's an important part of a free and civilized society. It can be abused. But quite why all the ire is directed... I've had far more disruption inflicted on my railway journeys by railway management than I ever had by any union.